The South African Human Rights Commission will conclude the receipt of oral evidence in the National Investigative Hearing into the July 2021 unrest in KwaZulu-Natal and the Gauteng province. The SAHRC panel presiding over the hearings comprise Commissioners Andre Gom, that is the chair of the hearing, Pilile Ntuli and Chris Nissen. During the various sessions of the hearings, the SAHRC received a large body of written and oral evidence from affected community members, civil society organizations, experts, business and government. SABC News senior reporter Griselda Lewis is tracking the story for us. Thanks very much, Griselda. Over to you.
Well, that's right, Nompo. You would recall that these hearings had been set up to probe what exactly could have led to the July unrest of 2021, where more than 350 people were killed, as well as, damage to business amounting to billions of rand. You would recall the last time President Cyril Ramaphosa had taken the stand here at the hearings and categorically pointing to the fact that he believed that what happened in July of 2021 had been a well-orchestrated attack on the democracy of this country. There also been widespread condemnation in terms of some of the evidence that we also heard here. You would know that police, top brass, as well as the state security agencies had also taken the stand here. What pointed to was police really not being able to deal with the situation as they should have, despite the fact that there had been intelligence of the impending threat prior to the violence that had taken place both in KwaZulu-Natal as well as here in Gauteng. We also heard from community members from Alexandra, one of the areas that had been affected. Several malls there, you would recall, had also been damaged as a result of the violence then. So very shortly, I will speak to the acting CEO of the South African Human Rights Commission, Chantal Kisun. Will talk to us a bit about, what or how far they are in terms of collating what we've heard so far. Remember, there have been two legs to these hearings, first in KwaZulu-Natal as well as here in Gauteng as well. Let's chat now to Chantal Kisun, who is the acting CEO of the South African Human Rights Commission. Chantal, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. This is the final leg of the oral testimony, I guess, before you wrap up and collate what it is that we've heard throughout these hearings, is it?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Griselda. Good afternoon to your viewers. Yes, it's a wrap-up. It doesn't conclude the process of reflecting on the evidence. We have a little bit of evidence that is yet to come through to the Commission, but for oral sittings, this is now the final leg, yes.
And today we're expecting the MEC of Economic Development in KwaZulu-Natal, Ravi Pillay, to give some testimony, but he's not here in that capacity. I understand he's here in his capacity as the Social Cohesion Group, is it?
Yes, this last sitting is actually to provide the opportunity for a collective of people who hail throughout KZN, NGO formations, academic experts, certainly activists and politicians even, community representatives from KZN, you have a long history in the province, who provided written submissions to the Commission at the conclusion of the KZN leg. We have had regard to those submissions, and we would want very much then to interact as well with the group a little bit further. It is a very balanced submission with helpful thoughts, and we would like to interact with the group a little bit more. I should add that the submission, in as much as it is presented by certain key figures in KZN who've been historically involved in our transformation, and certainly transformation and the protection of human rights in the province, also comes endorsed by a large number of signatories. And one of the notable signatories, amongst the many, is, for instance, the former United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. So that's quite a telling endorsement of the submission from a human rights lens, and so very valuable to the Human Rights Commission in the context of its consideration.
Does that submission deal with, in the context of what you said, deal with what happened in Phoenix? Is that what we're expecting to be part of today's testimony given here?
Well, look, without going into too much detail, the evidence is about to be presented. I can say quite confidently that it's not limited to the lives that were lost in Phoenix, or, for instance, the disruptions in the social fabric and relationships that came afterward. It's certainly not confined to that. It takes a very wide-angled view of some of the factors that can be attributed, but it also raises some very important questions around narratives that are set, opportunities to recognize the positive work that many members of our communities throughout the country threw themselves into to address the aftermath of the unrest, and certainly some even during. So it's a very balanced submission, and I feel very much like the detail is what we will receive shortly.
Yeah, the detail is what we'll receive, but there's been a lot of criticism over what had taken place in certain sections of KwaZulu-Natal, in particular in Phoenix. We saw the outrage. A number of leaders within society had gone to Phoenix, to try and establish, allegations of widespread racism. Are you not concerned as the Human Rights Commission that perhaps this might be an attempt to sanitize what took place there?
When you say an attempt to sanitize, do you mean the submission?
Yes.
My sense, I've been at a remove from the actual hearing itself, largely because it's an investigative probe and it's sub judice. My sense is it is at the furthest remove from that as could possibly be. And I certainly don't think it would assist our country to allow that kind of narrative to take hold, because the loss of life is permanent, it's irrevocable, and so one would undermine that entire experience to assume that it would be confined in one submission. You will recall that the Commission provided a platform and wanted very much to engage with families, friends, victims, support groups, and so forth. So the Commission has received a considerable wealth of information from all interest groups, all affected persons, private sector, businesses, and so forth. And the issue really around social cohesion, I think, and I speak as the acting CEO of the Human Rights Commission, is a very important one in our country. You're seeing the fractures manifest time and time again, whether it's truck driver violence or xenophobic outbreaks, just intolerance. GBV says a lot about social cohesion in our country, and so it's not confined to race-based intolerance and prejudice. There's really a lot for us to do and work on as a country on social cohesion. The Commission has a number of programs actually about to be launched nationally.
Ms. Kisun, if we're going to talk about social cohesion, we obviously have to speak about the systemic issues of, amongst others, racism, which we all know exists in this country. Apart from obviously, hearing today's submission and collating all the evidence that has been brought before this commission, how do we deal with that particular aspect, which continues to rear its ugly head? I recall my colleagues Sakina Kamwendo on Morning Live had done a huge broadcast to try and hear over concerns that had been raised about, violence meted out against different individuals in KwaZulu-Natal. And there were a lot of things thrown around, including issues of racism. How do we deal with that aspect if we're going to say that at least a certain aspect of these hearings was a success?
Yes. I think it's an important question, and every South African should actually be reflecting on that, because the difficult response is that there is no one golden bullet that will say to the public, you are one and you have survived the legacy of tremendous hatred, informed architecturally by this notion of different races and superiority. So there isn't one particular response. It is a question that should reside with every single one of us. And it's going to take a number of collective engagements, collective commitments to slowly begin to overcome this phenomenon in our country. It's so marked. The Commission sees it beyond what happened in July. You will know we launched an annual complaints trends analysis. And year in and year out since 2012, we've reported that complaints of inequality, complaints relating to racism are the highest in our country, not confined to KZN, but endemic in our country. It's how we as individuals grapple with this issue that we've inherited and has almost become entrenched.
Chantal, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. We've really run out of time. I know we've got to let you go. Thank you very much, Chantal Keeson, who is the acting Chief Executive Officer of the South African Human Rights Commission. We're expecting, as I indicated, not in his capacity as the MEC of Economic Development in KwaZulu-Natal, Ravi Pillay, in his capacity as a social cohesion group. He will be here today to testify, and we're likely to hear from him a lot about what took place in Phoenix. You would know, while the CEO does mention that it's not confined specifically to that, I did ask her whether this was an attempt perhaps to sanitize what had taken place there, the criticism of racism, we understand, in that particular area. And she said that the testimony is not confined to that. We'll certainly hear what that testimony will include amongst some of those aspects, and we're expecting him to take the stand any minute now.
Thanks very much, my colleague there, Criselda Lewis. And that's where we leave it. We say goodbye from the On Point team. SA Today will be with you shortly.